Get there. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Saunders, and I'm an infrastructure advisor with the Nishnawbe Aski Nation. I have with me Michael McKay, the Director of Infrastructure for the Nishnawbe Aski Nation, and also my associate, Katie Laufenberg, from a company called FSET, based out of Kenora. So we will kick this off with a little introduction from Mike. I guess next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. As Jamie said, my name is Michael McKay. I work at the Nishnawbe Aski Nation. I'm also a member of Bearskin Lake First Nation. It's one of the communities within NAN, for short form. Yeah, I'll get into our presentation. So NAN is a political territorial organization representing 49 First Nations in Northern Ontario. We have an estimated population, approximately 45,000 people. The communities are grouped up into tribal councils. There's about 7 tribal councils within the NAN territory, but also there's also 6 communities that are unaffiliated, that are not affiliated with a tribal council. So NAN is within the James Bay Treaty 9 and Ontario's portion of Treaty 5. It has a total landmass covering 2/3 of the province. Yeah, so it's quite a large area, all the way from the Manitoba border along the Hudson Bay to the Quebec border. Here's just a map of Ontario, but also you'll see in the northern part of Ontario, that's where NAN territory begins. You also have the list of communities within NAN. We have 33 remote First Nations, only accessible by air. And in the winter months, we have a winter road, ice roads. There's about 6 corridors through the province there. And just to go over the project need, when the COVID-19 pandemic was announced, and when that came into when that hit the communities, it really highlighted the need to improve connectivity within the NAN territory. Everything, all the services kind of moved into a virtual platform. You know, whether it was health, education, justice. And so I remember during the beginning of the pandemic, we had leadership calls every day. And the chiefs and the leaders made it quite clear that there needed to be something, there needed support and improvements to the community's broadband. And so the chiefs in assembly passed a NAN resolution to support for broadband upgrades for COVID-19 global pandemic. Yeah, so the resolution stated that the proposed broadband upgrades fall within the Ministry of Infrastructure's Broadband and Cellular Action Plan, as it supports communications, employment, education, healthcare, business, and strengthening critical safety networks, and funding must be provided to support reliable online service delivery for NAN First Nations. There you go.
Thanks, Mike. So of those communities that are within NAN, 34 of those communities have 1 or more schools, so 44 total schools. 27 of the communities with schools have only fly-in or winter road access. And as of March 2020, as I'm sure everyone is aware, all of our schools closed to students. Now, the limitations in NAN territory, like the broadband limitations, really limited the ability of students to participate in online classes. Hearing a lot about education so far. And I also wanted to stress that, we, within NAN territory, lost 7 youth in the years, probably the last 20 years previously. And because the youth have to come out of the community to go to school in Thunder Bay. And so there was an inquest into the deaths of those youth. And one of the recommendations in order to provide healthy learning environments that encourage attendance and participation by students, Canada should provide funding to ensure that education facilities have adequate internet bandwidth to support full access to all available online learning for all learners. So which brings us further down the path of the project need. At the beginning of 2020, the average household broadband download speed was 2 megabytes per second in NAN territory. And the entire capacity limit within the communities averaged at 800 megabytes per second. So that's, communities of 3, 4, up to 2 or 3,000, 300 or 400 up to 2,000 people. There are multiple community-owned fiber service providers in the territory, including Western James Bay Telecom Network, Rapid Links, and KNet. These providers have struggled valiantly to bring fiber to home, and they continue to work valiantly to do that. But at the time of the project development, Bell Canada was unable to provide additional capacity to increase the bandwidth. Significant equipment upgrades were required, and even if the upgrades were funded appropriately, would take multiple years to roll out the projects. So we were approached by the Ministry of Education. Just a caveat, myself and Mike and our team, we are not broadband experts. We're overall infrastructure generalists, so it was more of a project management approach, them approaching us for the project management portion of the project. And we were looking at applying for a broadband project focused on K-12 students within the territory. This project that was funded through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan. We started the application process in March of 2021. We were approved in July 2021 under the education portion of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan, COVID stream for Indigenous education. And I would be remiss not to mention the funders. The project was a 2/3, 1/3 collaboration between the federal and provincial governments. So I'll pass this off to Katie to talk about where our project partner comes in.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, hi everyone. I'm Katie Laufenberg. I'm an implementation manager with FSET. We're an IT provider in the traditional territory of the Nishnawbe Aski of Treaty 3, which is in Kenora, a small town in northwestern Ontario. We act as a full service IT provider to large and small businesses across the public and private sector, so healthcare, education, law enforcement, lots of different areas that we provide service to. But we also really seek to increase efficiencies with technology, so we try to help all of our clients with that. And connectivity was a major barrier. A lot of our clients are in remote communities in northwestern Ontario and Manitoba, so there's one NAN-affiliated community, Pikangikum First Nation, the Pikangikum Health Authority we started working with in 2017. To give another stat on their connection, they're one of the largest communities in the territory. They have about 2,000 people, and they were sharing a bandwidth of 1 gigabyte per second for all those 2,000 people. So from 2017, working years advocating on their side, trying to get better connection, is a story. We have a video that we're going to try to play next to tell the story of the Pikangikum and the work that we did with them. Because the video will tell it better than I can. So hopefully this works.
all the projects I've probably been involved in, this is, for me personally and professionally, the most rewarding one. I've never worked with a community or a customer or a client that's been more excited about something or happier. And I just, I don't know what could be more rewarding than that.
After many, many months of trying to get internet to Becandricum through other means, Dave was really determined to find a different way. He began doing a lot of research and eventually reached out to SpaceX.
They went back and they got the approval, and they came back to me and said that Becandricum was going to be the first SpaceX Starlink client in Canada. That changed everything from that moment on.
I work for Becandricum Health Authority. I'm a community person who really believes in their community, and I hope that it gives the younger generations a little bit of hope. We're creating a pathway for the younger people.
It's a long time coming. The biggest thing will be accessing services. I think that was the biggest issue for us.
Better services in terms of how health is delivered remotely and education.
Up until Thursday of last week, you couldn't get a college education from Becandricum. You can now. That access to that information allows them to change the world and shape their path and future.
This is a monumental deal. I mean, for the community of Becandricum to be able to have high-speed internet within 15 minutes of it landing on the ground is incredible.
Yeah, you're laughing because you know what it was like before. Before it was like three. Like three.
I never expected to see that kind of number.
Yeah, it's better than 60 kilobytes per second. That's actually how fast our internet was.
This solution can be used for healthcare, for education, for virtual court purposes. Anything that you can think of that's done virtually in another environment or in another city can now be done in Becandricum in a remote fly-in community.
I can only think of the difference that it can make at the school for the students. Right now, because of COVID-19, all of our instruction is online.
From a perspective of policing, it's very difficult sometimes to do business in a timely fashion. A lot of challenges that we see right now, we're going to be able to overcome them due to the speed.
Just that we were a part of the project and that we had the pleasure to help them get this far is just awesome.
My goal has always been to start with the youth, the kids, the children. When that playing field isn't level, then we're doing something wrong. I think what we've done here is that there's still a lot of work to do, but at least we have access to technology and information, and hopefully that playing field is at least a little closer to being level.
It's pretty exciting, and I'm sure the community is just as excited as I am today.
Everyone deserves to have this kind of service because at this point in history, internet isn't just a luxury, it's a need.
I'm just hoping that's the start of a great thing.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll go past here. Okay, so that was November 2020 is where that story's from. Becandricum has had another round of installs since then. We've worked with over 109 communities to bring Starlink across the region from Alberta, Ontario, Manitoba. We've helped assisted communities or organizations with 6 different grant writing opportunities, but we're also just approached by private organizations and communities that somehow, maybe saw the video, heard about us, and approach us to help them with the ordering process. So in our work with NAN, the project was designed to connect 2,128 homes with Starlink, student homes specifically, K-12, across the communities. At the time, there were capacity constraints with Starlink. It's still a young company. They were just out of beta, so the limits were about 60 units per community. 60 homes is what we're looking at. And then there were people in some of these communities that already bought this on their own, so the numbers moved up and down a bit. But then also, in addition to the student homes, we were able to get business service for schools and education buildings within the community. So basically wherever learning was taking place within the community would also be able to get a business service kit. The funding for each community included the cost of the Starlink equipment, so the kit, a year of prepaid service, mounting hardware, the payment of someone to install it, and then data collection. Okay, and I think I'm passing it back to Jamie once I get to the next one. Yeah.
We were sort of full speed ahead on deploying internet in whatever way possible. It was up to us to get people signed up. And we contacted education directors, principals, and chiefs and councils to identify the number of required student homes and education buildings in each community. We provided that information to FSET, who cataloged the location, service, and contact information that we needed to process those, to get the data, business, and school service that wasn't available publicly at the time to service those anchor institutions, or those education buildings. The agreement for service is directly between the community and SpaceX. NAN is not involved in that relationship other than to facilitate, and we paid the SpaceX invoice on behalf of the communities for the kits, the hardware, and the accessories. It was then up to the individuals within the community to sign up for service. Once they'd signed up for service, identified their location, if you've had familiarity with Starlink and SpaceX, at that point the account is created and the kit ships out to the end user. I think that's the one. So we collected project data and managed project communications through the Monday.com project management platform. I think there's probably a place for an entire session on online project management platforms and their usage. We had good success with Monday.com. It was fairly intuitive, and our teams worked quite well within that platform. The Starlink kits shipped individually as they were signed up for by the community members, but they were all shipped to NAN as a central location. Part of the problem with remote First Nations is it's very difficult to get stuff into them. So we had a storage unit, and we would receive, pallets upon pallets upon pallets. Aaron, I have to give a shout out to our project coordinator, Aaron, who managed all the logistics. She spent a good part of the last 18 months just hauling Starlink units back and forth between places. So we moved them to a central storage location. There were also some additional purchases required. We included mounting kits for the satellites. If you've ever worked with a Starlink, their mounting setup is not the greatest or the most robust, and if you don't get it up high enough, service doesn't particularly work well. So we got these kits into the community however we could. A lot of the time we chartered planes. So a Pilatus PC-12 can hold about 35 of the Starlinks in the big boxes, up to about 50 with the Gen 2s with the small rectangular kits. So we learned a lot about, cargo dimensions and cargo costs. There were other ways to do it. We had staff drive a cube van into Mishkego-Gaming to deliver the units to the school there. At one point, community Cat Lake was picking up a fire truck from down in southern Ontario, so you can see the picture. Aaron loaded all the Starlink units into the brand new fire truck, and the fire truck brought the kits to the community. So, it was kind of like a planes, trains, and automobiles approach to deploying these however we could. I feel like I should have a slide explaining the installation, but you can see some of the installation setups. You can see the couple different kind of mounts. The one on the bottom right, someone just screwed the tripod directly to the roof. We do not recommend that mounting technique. We did provide these fascia mounts, universal J mounts for the very purpose of mounting, but we saw all sorts of different things mounted to roofs of vehicles sitting in yards and washing machines, and there were a lot of good ones. I feel like I'm missing a slide there. One thing I would like to mention as well, it might come up later, but we provided financial means to the community to pay for the installations. It was an option. We would pay $250 per kit installed to a community contractor. So most communities did take us up on that, paying the local contractors and doing the work themselves. In the case where they didn't, we would typically pay a contractor to come in and do the installations. I know FSET did some installations for us. A company named Turnkey did some installation for us. We would go with the preferred local contractor, or in the case of no preference, we would bring someone in. So to date, we've got 2019 total kits procured. That commenced, procuring the kits commenced in October 2021. As I'm sure you're all familiar with the grant process, moving the money sometimes takes time. We have 1,937 student homes and 82 education buildings. Of those, 2019, over 1,700 have been installed. There's always a lag. People have to sign up for the units, so that additional 300 units is people who have actually, the unit has been procured on their behalf, but they haven't signed up for the service. We're in 38 communities, and we are looking at a cost per home of approximately 3,000 Canadian. This includes all the equipment, mounting accessories, prepaid service, installation, but also need to consider the shipping to the remote areas. Shipping has been a huge deal, and anyone who's following Transport Canada regulations and flight duty regs, the cost of charters and flights is going through the shipping is a big deal. Come on. So there was a second phase of this project as well, and this phase was to fund IT infrastructure upgrades in schools. We used some of this funding to improve physical networks within the schools. The education authorities or school principals identified who they wanted to work with as an IT provider, and then they would go in, do an assessment on what they thought the school needed, provide us with some quotes, and then we would purchase the equipment and they would do the installation. These upgrades include things like network racks, battery backups, core switches, load balancing firewalls, upgraded wireless access points, and server upgrades. We have 13 of the schools who've received those physical IT upgrades so far. We're moving into the third, it was a 3-year program, and we're moving into the 3rd year of the program right now. So most of our deployments of the satellites has been done. So now we're moving into those school IT upgrades. So this is a quote from one of our school IT service provider, like their IT people. And it's been groundbreaking improvements for the school. All the staff and students can now use their devices at the same time. The internet and networks run like an appliance. It just works all the time wherever you are within the school. A lot of the time in their school, it would be like, okay, well, your devices only work in and around the library, or only only the computer lab has the internet access, things like that. So moving towards something that most people in non-First Nations communities, particularly in non-remote communities, never think of the fact that your internet only would work in one location. So, speaking to the educators, it's almost like thankless work, because once it's there, no one remembers what it used to be like, right? They don't remember the fact that you always had to go to the library to use the Wi-Fi, where now everyone's just using their Wi-Fi wherever they want. So another part of these IT infrastructure upgrades was, oh, I was supposed to give this to Katie to talk about that, but she'll talk a little bit about FSET's work with building cloud tech.
So as part of phase 2, Jamie talked about physical upgrades. FSET's helping do a pilot project for a cloud infrastructure upgrade. So the idea is a community cloud for education, since the focus of the funding was for education. So we'll be building a cloud infrastructure where third-party providers can exist, and each community can have its own data sort of separated by community. I have a graphic I'll show you next that might help a little bit. So basically they can securely access the information, but also keep it private or share among common applications. And we're designing it with security in mind first. Okay, so there's the graphic. So it's Waban Tribal Council. You'll see the community names along the bottom there. Education will be our first focus. You can see the graphic. You can actually do link aggregation or bond signals. So a lot of these communities have Starlink. They might also have LTE. They might also have fiber. You can combine those to strengthen and provide redundancy for the schools. We can provide, like I mentioned, the third-party providers. All of these, most schools use a student information system, so some sort of record to keep track of students, all the information about them, their grades, those sorts of things. A lot of those programs, and popular ones, are only available on physical servers in communities, which isn't great when you're not at the school, or if a student moves from one school to another. So by putting, the plan is to put student information system in the cloud, so that when a student moves from one school to another within this tribal council or any other group that decides to join this cloud, their record can travel with them. So educators know where they came from, and their record can travel with them, which is really valuable to educators. This specific tribal council, we're starting with education, but they're also really interested in data and creating a member database, so that might be where this will go next, but it can go across all sectors, so healthcare, community services, finance, governance. We've done this for law enforcement as well. That's sort of what the prototype is based off of, is FSET's created a cloud for law enforcement officers to be able to access information all remotely, but keeping it all secure and segregated. And I should mention too that FSET's building this, and we're just really the custodians or guardians of the data, but the data is all owned by the communities themselves, and anyone else could step in if someone didn't want to work with FSET in the future. Another provider could come in and take this over, basically hand over the credentials, that the data stays with the communities. Okay. Oops, I skipped one. Okay. Back to Jane.
So obviously, in a project like this, there's a lot of challenges, and I'm really not a cheerleader for any specific system, and we recognized many of the challenges early on in this project, and one of the main challenges was that the continued use of Starlink service has impacts on the ability to generate own source revenue for communities who own their fiber providers. We were aware of this, and the project the project was intended to be a stopgap measure for the time until fiber to home can be completed. There's no obligation for anyone after having that first year of Starlink service to carry on with the service. If they want to, that thing can become a paperweight at the end of the year. There's no, Starlink isn't going to come after people for not continuing to pay their bill, because we do want to, as an organization, NAN very much supports the ability of the communities to generate their own revenue. Surprisingly, there was resistance in some communities to increase community connectivity. Sort of the big bad boogeyman that's the internet. With more bandwidth comes the ability to get into more trouble. I kind of looked at it a little bit of a different way. If we help, Dave and Nicole sort of alluded it to in that video. If we help, this helps one more kid get a high school education or move on to college. I think it's done the right thing. This is just providing a bigger information pipe to communities that haven't had that in the past. Surprisingly difficult to get people to actually get them signed up. SpaceX doesn't make things easy when it comes to signing up, when it comes to service orders. Their standard response is, well, you have to create a work order on the internet. Well, what if you can't get online? You can't create a work order, right? So we spend a lot of time working directly with community members, getting them into their emails, getting them onto the SpaceX website, signed in, identifying their Google Plus code for their location. It was really a lot of work at the community level, getting people signed up. This is a telling point. Collaboration with SpaceX was unique, and the pace of change is rapid. They don't like to tell you what's going on a lot of the time, and they kind of change things, and you don't necessarily get the information until it happens. And quite honestly, we come with suggestions, and a lot of the time there's not a consideration as to the reality of life in the remote Northern First Nations. The only way to continue payment for your Starlink unit once your 1 year subscription is completed is through a credit card or a wire transfer. And many NAN community members don't have credit cards, so they have not provided a way for people to actually continue paying for the service if they wanted to. So, I think Katie can attest to this. Sometimes it's like talking to a brick wall when you're making a suggestion to a $1 billion company. They're not particularly concerned, it seems sometimes. So the initial adopters of this program are coming up to the end of their 1 year service contracts, and we've been communicating with community leadership and community membership regarding their options for continuing to use the service. There still is not fiber to home in all the locations within NAN territory, so it is still very much an option for community members. They have the ability to transfer ownership of the Starlink unit to other individuals within the communities if they choose to continue someone else's or continue with someone else's dish. So we're trying to ensure that everyone who wants to continue can continue, and working with. We've had communities approach us to say, we wish to continue paying for the Starlink units for the community. People may be familiar with Jordan's principle, We've had communities be successful in continuing to have units paid for through Jordan's principle, which is one way to approach it. We're working with the Ontario Ministry of Education to try and secure funding to continue the Starlink service for schools and education buildings. Even if it is only as a backup, I think there's value in redundancy. Fiber does get damaged. There's lots of work going on in the community, and fiber does get cut. This way, the schools, which act as sort of critical muster points in emergency for evacuations due to flooding, fire, things like that, can stay operational even in the event that the fiber is cut. I think the other thing to mention is that most of our communities are still on diesel generating stations, so power is unreliable at best as well. So there's a lot of challenges. We'll continue to work with the leadership to improve IT in the schools. Like I said, this was all about getting kids access to learning opportunities during COVID, and however we can support that continuing, obviously we will. And we continue to advocate for fiber to home as well, realizing that the benefits of community-owned networks are, the end. Like community-owned networks are the end goal. No one wants to be paying money to a billion. Communities should and could own that infrastructure. So, I think that's one thing I really want to stress is that we were put in a position to execute a project for the good of the students. I can stand up here and weigh the benefits versus the detriments of SpaceX and Starlink and low Earth orbit versus fiber all day long, but that wasn't my place. This was strictly about deploying and getting internet to kids. So I think that the partnership we had with FSET and the work we did do with the tribal councils and the communities speak for itself. So with that said, I'm happy to entertain any conversation about the technology and the benefits or the detriments, and happy to provide any of our insights into the work that was done, because it was really fast, and it was like go from the very beginning. So yeah, by all means, I welcome the conversation, and yeah, please ask any questions.
Hey, we just have time for one quick question, just because we're starting to run behind. But oh, okay, I can just stand here for the rest of the time.
Hi, Jamie.
That's okay. Hi.
You said that Starlink costed out at $3,000 per home. The Western James Bay Telecom Network, we've come in under budget. We're at $3,333 per home. NOHFC allocates $500 per home in funding. I think NAN is uniquely positioned at this time to write a letter to NOHFC with these numbers and ask them to increase the amount per home. That's the first thing. Second thing, Alfred wants to know who owns the equipment.
The individual who signed up owns the equipment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The other thing too is around community resistance. It's really important when you deploy internet in a community that the community itself get together and decide what the community standard is going to be. What's going to be allowed and what's socially acceptable in that community, in that culture. That's it.
Thank you. And I'll let you choose one of your 4 questions.
Okay, so one's a comment, and then real quickly though, as we gather more and more satellites and all of this equipment in space, right? I'm just saying we as a world are going to need to come up with a way to clean that all up. So that's my only environmental standpoint coming from satellite technology, because that's going to become an issue. It's going to be like the new ocean of the world, right? Secondly, to the person that did the inventory, because we also use Monday.com, did you have an inventory software that you use to handle all of those thousands of units?
No, we used Monday.com and strictly took pictures of the shipping labels, and the shipping labels had a lot of that individuals who ordered the units information on it. So if we could view the shipping label through Monday.com, we were able to usually track down the end user and how to get the unit to them. And just quickly on your environmental comment, I come from a wastewater, waste management, environmental background, so I hear that completely. And we did hear that in our consultations initially about the program, like, what are we going to do with all this junk in the northern sky, right? And we're not quite Alaska, but we get some pretty epic northern lights and pretty epic skyscapes up north, and it's a very real concern. So, and thank you all very much. And I'm around for the next few days, so see insights into what we did. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's give a hand to our presenters.